we've had some success in keeping our tuition down and in guaranteeing our scholarships. The result of that has been that we've done pretty well in terms of limiting the debt of our students when they graduate. So if you look at the average debt of a law graduate from an Ohio law school, in 2015, I think it was just under $100,000 of average debt for a student who had debt, and our average debt is about $20,000 below that. So we've managed to keep an Akron law education reasonably affordable for our students, and that's really been our first basic strategy, is to try and keep the product that we're selling affordable so that students can afford to buy it. Second thing that we've done a lot of is focus on outcomes. The ABA, the federal government, to some extent the state governments, increasingly are focusing on outcomes at all levels of education, including legal education. By outcomes, I mean not just what are the credentials of the students when they come to your law school, what kinds of programs are you offering when they get to your law school, but what are the results when they leave your law school? Are they passing the bar? Are they getting jobs? Those kinds of measures are becoming increasingly important for accreditation purposes, for purposes of guaranteeing student loans on the part of the federal government, and also for purposes of recruiting students. So we've been focusing on outcomes at our law school. We have, recognizing that the demographics of the students that we've been admitting to the law school have been changing a little bit over the last few years, we have ramped up our academic success programs. So these are programs that are outside the basic curriculum. These are professionals who work very closely with our students to give them the support that they need to sort of learn how to study, learn how to be a law student most effectively, and also to start preparing for the bar examination. So we've ramped that up. We've hired some more people, professionals to do that job at Akron Law. We've added a couple of courses in our curriculum designed to focus on the kind of skills that law students need to pass the bar. Those are the legal reasoning and advanced legal reasoning courses. We have been able to give $2,250 to each of our graduates to subsidize the cost of a commercial bar review, bar prep course, to make it a little easier for them to prepare for the bar. And as a result of those things, I think we've done pretty well in both bar passage and employment. The last two, we don't know the results from the most recent July bar yet, but the previous two July bars, 15 and 16, our graduates ranked in the top 3 among the 9 law schools in Ohio, so we've had some success with our academic success and bar preparation efforts, and we've also done pretty well on employment. Our 2016 employment numbers are just over 90%, and that's about 3 points above the national average. So we've had some success with outcomes as well. And then I think the third major component of what we've tried to do to meet some of the challenges that we talked about earlier is to try and find students in new places or new students in the old places, right? Recruit non-traditional students. So we have a 2-year JD program for foreign lawyers. And what that really is it's a program that allows someone who has a law degree from a foreign country to transfer in up to a year's worth of credits for their JD program at Akron Law. That means they can finish their U.S. JD program in as little as 2 years. And we've had some success attracting some students into that program, and one of the added benefits of that is it gives us some real diversity in terms of the kinds of people who are attending the law school. We have ramped up some non-JD programs, and I think you'll see some similar approaches from some of the other law schools. These are programs that offer degrees or certificates outside the traditional JD degree. So we have a Master of Studies in Law program, which is a 30-credit program designed to give some legal training and a legal credential to people who don't want to practice law, don't want to invest all of that time and all those resources in a 3-year or 4-year JD degree, but they do need some legal training or want some legal training to sort of help them in their existing profession deal with the legal issues that they deal with in that profession. We have an LLM program for lawyers with JD degrees. We have an IP certificate for non-lawyers. So we've been developing some non-degree and certificate programs as a way to bring different demographic of students into the law school. We started a couple of years ago a spring start option, which simply means that our entering JD students can start their studies in January, which we euphemistically refer to as spring, rather than in late August. And that gives a little flexibility, and we've had some success in bringing some students who I don't think would necessarily have come to Akron Law otherwise, because they have the option. Maybe they graduated in December, or maybe they've been working a job and they're ready to move on to law school and don't want to wait until August. We've had some success bringing in students to start in January rather than August. And as I said earlier, we've had some success recruiting outside the state of Ohio. University of Akron School of Law is always going to be primarily an Ohio law school. 50% of the lawyers in our county, Summit County, are graduates of our law school. We're going to maintain those close ties with the local bench and bar, but we've had success bringing people in from states as far away as California, Florida, Utah, Colorado. We have a pretty substantial pipeline to New York, to Pennsylvania. So that about 25% of our JD population now is students from outside the state of Ohio. And that's been a way that we've been able to bring some students in who we otherwise would not have at the law school. And it's also, again, had a side benefit of adding a little diversity in various ways to our student population. So those are some of the strategies that we've used at Akron Law to try and meet some of the challenges that Dean Berg described, and I'd be happy to talk about them later during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, CJ. So, as you know, Case Western has 2 deans, and some people ask us if we each just do 50% of the job. Because of the challenges facing legal education, we are actually doing 100% deaning each. And a lot of schools look at us and say, we wish we could do that too, because being a dean right now is really difficult in the nation's law schools across the board. In some ways, Case Western is different than the other 2 schools here today. We're a private school, the others are public. Traditionally, 2/3 of our students come from out of state, and they end up going out of state, and about more than half of our alumni are scattered across the United States. Our tuition is generally much more expensive, and we are giving scholarships that bring that down, but it's just a different model. So in 2011, when the bottom fell out of the market, our faculty and the trustees got together and said, we do not want to sacrifice the quality of our education. So we get students at a 159 median LSAT, and we wanted to make sure that we continued to do that no matter what was going on. We also wanted to make sure that our students could get jobs on the other end. So we self-consciously reduced our class size from what had been an average of 225 over many years to what is now about 140 students in the incoming class. Now, how do we pay for this? At first, there was some deficit spending that the Board of Trustees allowed us to do, but then we started using our 2-dean model to work very hard to ramp up a lot of new revenue sources for the law school. So the first one is, we used to have 3 SJDs. These are foreign PhD students coming to the law school. We're now over 50. And those are full paying. They go back to their countries, they become law professors, or they have high-level jobs in their governments. We also have a very robust LLM program, and there are 4 separate LLM degrees. And we've had it now for 26 years, and we built on that so that now we have about 120 foreign students in our school, which creates a very international feel for our JD students who come in as well. In addition, we started creating new kinds of partnership programs that brought in more foreign students, and also new kinds of programs that brought in American students. So we have a new Master's of Patent Practice, which is a 1-year degree that allows people who are engineers to practice before the patent office, even though they're not a JD. We have a master's of financial integrity, and in this world where there's so much corruption, counterterrorism, financing, and all the other issues, this has become a very popular degree. We had proof of concept in Cleveland. We're launching in DC next month, then in New York, then perhaps in Miami, London, and Paris, and it will continue to grow. So we found these other external revenue sources to allow us to continue to make the JD the brand for the school, and these other things to keep us in business. In addition, we've always had some really strong specialties, and we decided to focus on them. At one point, there had been deans where we had 10, 11 different centers, and we were advised that you can't be a specialty or an expert in everything. So we are now focusing on the three biggest ones that have traditionally been well known, which is our health law program, which is ranked 9th, international law, which is ranked 12th, and our intellectual property, which has been ranked in the top 25. At the same time, our faculty decided to do a complete overhaul of our curriculum to make us more attractive and more realistic for the new generation of lawyers. And we did this only after talking to 70 different law firm partners and other experts that were our alums and otherwise. And we came up with a 3-year program that completely integrates experiential education, starting in the first year, building in the second year, and then in the third year we have a capstone where students can do a clinic in-house or work at an externship outside. And our students, we believe, are more practice ready than ever before. We've gotten a lot of recognition by the U.S. News and World Report and the National Jurist and Pre-Law Magazine for the unique approach to experiential education. And it's also been a real attraction to a lot of students. Related to that, we now have a new active learning classroom, which is a place that's suited for this new kind of educational approach. We were able, with the generosity of the Baker Hostetler law firm, to rehab and revamp our moot courtroom, where we do a lot of our experiential education. And we have an IP venture clinic, which has been representing at least 30 startups a year around Ohio and around the country, where our students are helping these new people create their products and bring them to market and launch their companies. We also realize that what's going on right now is there is going to be an uptick in applicants to law schools, and people are calling it the Trump bump. And what it means is that a lot of college kids are mad at the government, and they want to become lawyers to empower themselves to make change. And so we've always had strong public interest. Last year we created a new Stephanie Tubb Jones Public Interest Law Scholarship, which a dozen students have. And this year we're going to be really marketing what we do in public interest, and the fact also that we give a lot of scholarships to students so that they can practice public interest law and have an affordable education. And then finally, our job prospects have been increasing, and we see this nationwide. In part, it's because of the smaller number of students that are competing for the jobs. I do see someone from our career development office, Sam, in the audience. But in 2011, we had an 87% employment rate. Now we're up to 93%. And we do find that as those employment rates go up, more people are interested in becoming lawyers. And so we're optimistic about the future. We feel that we took reasonable and creative approaches to make our law school continue to be relevant, to continue to thrive in some difficult times, and it is doing both of those.
I want to begin by saying how much respect I have for the three deans who are here today. Michael and Jessica have mentored me these last 2 months, 2 years I should say, or a year and a half, which is why today we're announcing at Cleveland Marshall 4 co-deans. And if CJ does 5, we're doing 6. By the way, that's not exactly true, but some days I wish we had 3 or 4. I also would say to you that it's a little ironic that I have degrees from both law schools, but not my law school. CJ doesn't know this, but I got an honorary law degree from your law school when I was a commencement speaker 20 years ago, and I graduated from this law school. So I plan to get either an LLM or something from Cleveland Marshall, because I could not be more proud to be the Dean of Cleveland Marshall, which I think it's fair to say is an iconic institution in the state and particularly in this city. We like to think of ourselves as Cleveland's brain gain law school. I've spent a lot of the last 6 years traveling the country talking to cities about what makes attractive and successful cities. And if you could distill it into one word, it's talent. The cities that can not only attract but retain talent are the ones that will succeed. And one distinctive advantage we have over my colleagues here is that, by their own admission, 2/3 of their applicants are from out of state, and of course, CJ is based in Akron. So I think it's fair to say, although you might dispute it, we are Cleveland's law school. I know you would dispute it. But nonetheless, I think we are Cleveland's law school in that respect. That's not to say that, like Case and Akron, we don't recruit out of state. We do, and we do so aggressively. But we're particularly proud of the fact that most of our students actually stay in Northeast Ohio and practice in Northeast Ohio. Like my colleagues, we are focusing on many of the same things. First and foremost, excellence and innovation. We just recently opened a state-of-the-art, what's called Learning Commons, a collaborative learning space in our library in which students are encouraged to talk, as opposed to most libraries where you're discouraged. And we have state-of-the-art technology. We have a trial courtroom, and I know that Akron either has one or is about to do so as well, I've just read. So the bottom line is that this is an area, although litigation is decreasing, it is still a wonderful place for our students to understand litigation in all its aspects. My predecessor, Craig Boyce, started a solo practice incubator that is focused on those lawyers who want to focus on small practice, usually their own practice. And we have 10 spaces for 10 lawyers, and for the first time in our history, we have all 10 filled. We have a new Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection. Like my colleagues, we're trying to anticipate what's around the corner, and clearly this issue is around the corner. In fact, it's front and center. Also, like CJ, we have a Master of Legal Studies. In terms of affordable and accessible, we also have moved behind our colleagues here. We finally caught up. For many years, we did not have a requirement of academic good standing. You had to maintain a much higher GPA to keep your scholarship. And although there are some good reasons to do that, Akron and Case had a competitive advantage over us because they were not doing that. And we watched their success and so decided in the last 12 months to move and catch up with our colleagues, so we are not doing the same thing. One of the things we're also well known for, and for which we're very proud, is the fact that we not only have full-time study, but we have part-time day and evening study. There's almost not a day, or at least a week, that goes by when I don't meet a lawyer in Cleveland who says to me that were it not for the evening program, I would not be a lawyer today. So we intend to keep that evening program, and it's one of the things we're very proud of. Clearly, all the things that, one thing that we're all working on very hard is student success. We have a moral and ethical obligation once we admit a student who meets our standards to make sure they succeed. And there probably is no more important part of any of our missions than making sure that students succeed. So we have to provide the necessary academic support, because even those students who did very well in college sometimes have a rude awakening about the difference between doing well in college and doing well in law school. So we have an academic success program. We have something called a legal career opportunities program, which is more than 20 years old, designed particularly for those students whose LSAT scores were lower, but something in their resume or their past showed us that they have the capacity to do well. It could be a GPA, it could be something else. So we give them a head start. This year we also started a Jumpstart Program, regardless of your LSAT, regardless of your GPA, for any student who wants to get that head start. Half of our class chose to do it. It's no cost. We pay for it all, and I think it's the wave of the future. So in other words, many of our students right now started actually in July, as opposed to mid-August. And we also have a partnership with Barbary, one of the best bar preparation courses, where basically it's included in our tuition costs, so every student automatically is enrolled in Barbary and doesn't have to pay anything extra. They all take the Barbary bar prep course. We also, like my colleagues, are very much focused on being practice ready. We've started something recently called pop-up practicums. These are when we see an issue emerging, where it could be DACA or something else, we recognize that we have to be flexible and adapt. And we might not have a course that deals with what's happening in the world at the moment. So we've asked our faculty to try to be flexible to actually teach a semester course based upon something that may have just arisen in current events over the last 3 to 4 months. And so, for example, we're doing one on bail reform, we're doing one on police reform, a number of issues that are breaking all the time. We have a thriving community advocacy clinic that provides extensive pro bono services throughout our community. More than 50 active externship sites because we're an urban law school located in the heart of downtown. It's a big advantage that we have, that we can actually easily walk to those externship sites, which gives us, I think, an extra advantage. At least for 2 of the last 3 years of any law school in Ohio, we have the highest percentage of our graduates going into private practice. That actually is surprising to some people because we're also known as a public interest law school because many of our graduates go into the public interest area, as I did. And nonetheless, we try to have that balance of being a law school that prides itself in learning law and living justice, and that's social justice, but at the same time, strong partnerships with the private firms in town.
Well, thank you. That was great. I was particularly impressed to see that there are both parallels between the schools in terms of things that you have to do to remain on an equal footing, but yet some unique approaches to diversifying, tackling the challenges of 21st century legal education. So we do have a microphone available. We'd like to invite some questions from the audience, but let me go ahead and throw the first hand grenade out there. And that is, Ohio has 9 law schools. And we're seeing anywhere from about 1,000 to 1,200 people taking the summer bar exam and 300 to 500 taking the February bar exam. Are we producing too many lawyers in this state, and do we need 9 separate law schools?
Well, this is a very unexpected question. So I'll be interested to hear what my colleagues say about this. I think I have 2 responses to it, to that very, very good question. One of them is that we have 9 law schools in Ohio, maybe 10 if you count Northern Kentucky, which is really a Cincinnati law school. But I don't think we have too many law schools in Northeast Ohio. I think we have a very good division or allocation among our law schools, different kinds of student bodies, different communities that we serve, different areas of specialty. So I won't speak for the other 6, but I'm pretty confident that 3 of the law schools represented up here are going to be around for a very long time and continuing to serve the public and the state of Ohio and the nation with the folks that we graduate. The other thing that I want to say very briefly is that this is a national issue, and it's often been said that we have too many lawyers in this country. We clearly do not have too many lawyers in this country. There are many legal needs that are going unserved or underserved. Our real challenge, I think, as a society, and legal education is of course part of this, is to try and find ways to serve those populations that are underserved while we continue to do what we do. And I think a number of the things that we've seen just in the presentations today in terms of alternatives to a traditional law degree are a step in that direction, right? So if we're offering someone the opportunity to get a master's degree, for instance, that will help them in their field of professional endeavor at a much lower cost than a law school or a full JD degree, then that's sort of a step in that direction. So I think what we're seeing from law schools is that we're moving towards different models to make legal education, broadly understood, more accessible, and therefore legal services more accessible in the long run. So I don't think we're going to be saying in 10 or 15 years that we have too many lawyers.
Anyone want to disagree with Dean Peters? Questions from the audience? Karen.
Thanks to all of our panelists for very interesting presentations. A liberal arts degree has long been a pipeline to law school. Should we be trying to increase the number of STEM undergraduates who have degrees in science, technology, engineering, and math, to apply to law school, and if so, how can we do that?
So I'll answer that one. The answer is yes, we should. We obviously come from a science engineering major university, and in fact, we often have students who come from very different kinds of backgrounds. I think it is important. I think one of the great benefits of a law degree is that it really can teach you how to think coming from a lot of different kinds of areas. There's a lot of benefit to coming from different kinds of undergraduate backgrounds. I think it is a problem if we continue to think there's only one pathway through, or maybe a small number of pathways through into law school. So I think it is an important thing for law schools to be talking to students across many different fields and explaining why a law degree could be particularly valuable. There are clearly areas of law that more and more now draw from some of the sciences, and that's also important. So I do think that we should be doing that. For our perspective, I mean, we focused on it both in just, we have some advantage of just being able to talk to undergraduates, many of whom are really coming from those sciences, but also to make it clear why you would get a law degree. What do you do with a law degree? What are the kinds of careers you go into? Why it is valuable? I think that's important for us to be doing for students coming from any undergraduate background, but in the sciences, obviously, that's even more important. We go on the road and we talk to undergraduates, because we do this routinely throughout the entire year, partly because we drop from so many different parts of the country. Michael and I travel all through the country, and we talk at all different undergraduate institutions all over the place. And part of what we try to do is explain to students, even early in their career, how do you think about where you are now, what you think you might want to be doing, and why law school both might be a good career path, and what should you think about at the moment for that? And we try to correct a number of misconceptions, right? You really can have any major, but it's really important that you're taking writing courses from day one, and you don't let that slide. If you're not doing that, you will struggle, right? If you finish your degree undergraduate and you find you've managed to, spend your last 2.5 years without writing any kind of a paper, boy, the first year of law school is going to be a significant shock. So trying to get them to understand, no, there's no major, but there are some things you might want to do. And at the same time, here are career paths, here are different areas that we see students go into that can mesh their science background, their math background, engineering background, other kinds of areas, and use law also. So I think that is part of what we do.
I just want to say something about both questions very quickly. First, with regard, are there too many law schools in Ohio? That is a good question, and the honest answer is I don't know. I do agree with CJ about the three of us, but I think we would be naive to think that the state legislature isn't asking that question and won't ask it more often in future years, which puts pressure on all of us to be financially sustainable and distinctive. And I think it's fair to say that even if all 9 or 10 law schools survive over the next 100 years, it makes our jobs more difficult, because the truth is a lot of our colleagues around the country, there are only 1 or 2 or maybe 3 law schools in their state. So we face much stiffer competition for students, at least with regard to Ohio students, which is why all of us, even Cleveland Marshall, which we call Cleveland Brain Gate Law School, must recruit from out of state, just like Case and Akron are. With regard to STEM students, I think there's some indication and some research that STEM students do tend to do better on the LSAT. They certainly are perhaps better prepared for the jobs of the future. So it's pretty obvious to me that we ought to be doing a good job, a better job perhaps, of trying to recruit STEM students. But having said that, I go back to what Jessica said, and that is, It's not just STEM students. It even could be STEAMed students if you add art and design. The truth is that there is no required pre-law major. It used to be that you should be majored in government or political science or economics. That's not the case. The single most important skill in life, and certainly the single most important skill in law school, is communication. And the only thing I would add to that, it's not just written communication, it is verbal and oral communication as well. And so that's what we need to be focusing on in the undergraduate institutions. Those students who communicate well will, for the most part, do very well in law school.
Other questions from the audience? Carter.
Sure. I don't really need a mic, but
Save your voice.
Just a question for all of you, actually, about the teaching in the classroom. What programs are in place at your schools to help that be more effective and better? I graduated a long time ago, and there were a number of excellent professors, but there were some that weren't. And are there, whether it's peer review, what are some of the things that you're doing to make sure that the teachers, the professors have the tools to really be effective classroom teachers?
Well, that really is at the heart of what we do, no doubt about that. And things have changed since I was a law student as well. I graduated in 1992 from that law school in the state up north. And great experience, loved my law school experience, but I think that I wouldn't say that the teaching was the reason that I really loved that experience. There were some great teachers, but it was almost as if the teachers were great despite the culture, not because of it. Things have changed, I think, across the board, including at my alma mater in the last 25 years. Teaching is our law school, and I suspect at Case and at Cleveland Marshall as well, it's something that we pay a lot of attention to in various ways. So just one example, at Akron, we have a teaching committee that focuses on teaching, and every year they tackle one or two different issues for that year. This year it's assessments, bring in speakers, have workshops, have roundtables where the members of the faculty can talk about what they're doing and talk about their issues and so on. And it's very, very helpful. I've seen it work at other schools. It really is helpful to just create the culture where everybody understands that teaching is very, very important. And I think we're trying to do that. I assume that that's probably true at the other schools as well.
So let me just add, one of the really nice things about our faculty at Case is that it is ranked 25th in most scholarly citations. And you might think that that means that they're out there writing all the time and not focusing on their teaching, but in fact studies have shown that those law faculty who are doing the most writing are also the most effective in the classroom because they're really excited about what they're doing. They're on the cutting edge, they're sharing this kind of information and this kind of thinking with their students. We at Case, and I'm sure at the other schools, do monthly pedagogy brown bag sessions. And whenever there's a new technology, we have wonderful IT at Case. Case is known as wonky. And we integrate that. So we have clickers, for students to use so that they can anonymously tell a professor on the screen behind them if they're getting it or not. And we use that a lot. Our more experiential education in our active learning classroom is requiring that our faculty relearn how to teach in the most innovative and exciting ways, because this is a generation who do not want to sit back and be lectured to. They want to have it as an interactive process. And the last thing is, law faculty generally, historically, have only tested at the end. And Jessica and I pushed our faculty very hard to have a series of assessments throughout the semester, like they do in undergrad, because all of the studies show that that's the best way to learn.
We're doing really much the same that these three deans are, but one thing I do want to say is that these three deans are also very experienced law professors, both in scholarship and teaching. I'm not. So this is an area in which I know what I don't know and still have a lot to learn, and so I'm learning from my colleagues. You want every professor to do extremely well in teaching and scholarship and service. but each have their own strengths as well. And so while I believe that every faculty member must focus on all three and be student-focused and student-centered first and foremost, you also want to play to each faculty member's strengths. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be focused on all three, but they can still excel in one in particular. And I do agree that the best scholarship is the applied scholarship that can be used to strengthen teaching as opposed to purely be theoretical.
Yes?
Hi, it's Robert Wilson. I'm just curious about what you're doing with regard to your scholarships. Where are you getting the money, and how are you utilizing your alumni in order to fund your school, and particularly with scholarship dollars? $100,000 average debt is quite staggering, and I'm just curious how you are, how you're addressing it.
Sure, well, I'll start on that one, and it's a huge issue, I'm sure, for all of us. So essentially, at Akron, I can't speak for the other schools, although I suspect there may be some differences in degree, but not in kind. But at Akron, the vast majority of our scholarships for our entering students are essentially discounts. We are essentially, if our base tuition is $25,000, if we offer a student a $10,000 scholarship, we're essentially saying you can come to Akron for $15,000 a year. So they're not funded, at least not inherently. They're just us discounting the face value of, or the price of the service that we provide. One of the major goals that I have as dean is to start putting some real money behind those discounts. And I think I'm having some success talking to my alumni and other supporters to emphasize the importance of doing that. When we start getting alumni and other supporters who will endow a scholarship or possibly will donate some money that's immediately available for scholarships, now we can put real money behind those discounts, and they're not discounts anymore because the money that we would otherwise use for those discounts stays in our general fund budget, and we can use it for other things. We can hire faculty, we can improve our programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, the fact is, and I think this is true generally in legal education in the United States, most scholarship money is discount, or most scholarships are discounts, not funded scholarships. My suspicion is, and Jessica and Michael can speak to this, my suspicion is that there's a larger percentage of funded scholarships at a school like Case Western than there is at a school like Akron, but I suspect that there's still a lot of discounting going on there as well.
Yeah, so CJ's correct. It's a mix of unfunded discount and funded endowed scholarships. We've had incredibly generous alumni. We have a very nice endowment that we've had, and Michael and I have grown over the last 4 years and continue to focus on talking to our alumni that this is important. We think it's important. Obviously, there are financial health issues, and we think about it just from a school level, but we also think it's really important to give students the choices that they should have about what they want to do in their practice and where they want to go. In order to do that, that means they need to not be burdened by significant amounts of debt. So we talk to our alumni about why we think, students who are looking at public interest positions, students who are looking at, a wide variety of areas need to be able to have that flexibility. So we both look at funded scholarship amounts for bringing them in the door, and then also we have a loan repayment structure for students who are going to make choices when they graduate to go into public interest areas, and then we also help them at that point.
I think that this is the single most vexing issue facing law schools today, at least the vast majority of law schools, including the three of ours. It is a buyer's market. It's a buyer's market for students. It's even a buyer's market for clients in the legal market. Clients are dictating to law firms what costs are, what kinds of services, what kind of lawyers they hire, whether they're going to pay for first and second year lawyers. And students, if you want to go to law school, this is the time to go to law school, because you are likely, if you have done well on the LSAT and have done well undergraduate, to get a scholarship. And it's sort of like an economic development arms race. Cities around the country are putting inordinate amount of sums down to get businesses to come to their cities or their states. This is very similar to that. And I think we all wish it weren't so, but we have to play by the rules of the game. And so it seemed to me there's a problem here that we need to at least acknowledge, even if we don't know how to solve. And that is, to me, the ideal scholarship, in many ways, is one that is financial need based. And for the most part, although there are exceptions, law schools are not providing financial need scholarships. They're providing merit scholarships based upon prior academic performance or prior aptitude, which means that the students who are not doing as well, GPA, or scored lower, are the ones who are incurring the debt. They're the ones who are paying full tuition or close to full tuition, and so in a sense, our law schools are funding ourselves on the backs of students who may end up struggling in law school. It's a serious problem. I don't have an answer, but we at least have to acknowledge that it's a problem. Having said that, there's no question that all of us are very much focused on raising the necessary funds so that we don't have to discount and that those scholarships are funded. And all of us are having success with very loyal and generous alumni. But I hope that someday we can get to a point where we're also providing more financial needs scholarships and not just merit scholarships.
Well, our time together is rapidly drawing to a close. Let me just pose one more deliberately provocative question. And that is, as we talk about transforming legal education in the 21st century, the elephant in the room is the American Bar Association and its section on the legal education and credentialing of law schools, which sets the standards that anyone who wants to take the bar exam in virtually every state has to graduate from an ABA accredited law school. Is the ABA section on legal education doing enough? Are they intentionally being a gatekeeper? Are they being an obstacle to formulating a modern legal education?
I don't have, I'm afraid, a straightforward answer, but I'll say two things about
It's
it.
off the record.
I wish. I know that's not true. And here's what I'll say. I'm a newbie. I don't know yet. I don't know the answers. I have two thoughts, just very briefly. One is that, I think the ABA is, well, it's one thought with two parts. The ABA is struggling with at least two major issues now affecting law schools. One of them is that we need to be able to innovate in order to survive, and certainly in order to thrive. And yet we're operating against a stricture, a set of rules essentially that have been around for a very, very long time, and that were probably designed when law school and legal education looked very, very different than it does now. So as the ABA has to become more flexible, and I think that they are becoming more flexible in allowing law schools to innovate. But the other end of that question is you have, of that problem, the other horn of the dilemma is that you have to maintain quality. We have to have standards. I think that we've seen with the advent, we talked about for-profit law schools. We've seen with the advent of for-profit law schools in the last 20 years or so that there's a real issue there with quality. And the ABA does have a role in policing quality of law schools to make sure that students are actually getting a good legal education for their considerable investment. So where in between the need to allow innovation on the one hand and the need to enforce quality on the other, the ABA comes down is a difficult question. And I don't have the answer. Obviously, it's going to depend on the issue, but that's where the ABA is now, and I have some sympathy for that position.
I think that worse than the ABA, any conception you might have, is the U.S. News. In terms of what it does to the quality of law schools.
I had a question on that too.
But I know we're running out of time, so we'll throw that in there. But they have these criteria for rankings, and all the schools are worried about their rankings, and they game the system in ways that are not good for students. So, for example, and then they changed the criteria. But a couple of quick examples. There was a while where you could, as a law school, have your students enroll in 1 or 2 less classes in their first year, make it up over the summer, and they didn't count as entering students, but rather as transfer students, and therefore you didn't have to report for U.S. News their ranking, their median LSATs and GPAs. The same thing is now happening with transfer students. GW and Georgetown took over 100 students from American University, and that allowed those 2 schools in Washington to have small entering classes with high credentials, and then to make up the money on the backs of AU. These kinds of things happen because right now there's no alternative. There's no way to fight against U.S. News. There was a survey that came out recently of law students this year that said that the #1 criteria that they continue to use to pick schools is their rankings. But in a way, the American Bar Association is complicit, because what they report and what they require us to report allows U.S. News to use those different things. And so going back to the transfer policy, if the ABA was able to work with U.S. News to say that if you have people transfer in, whatever their LSATs and GPAs were from the prior school should be included in, then that would make a difference, and that would put a dampening effect on this sort of exploitative action. But I do think, if you look at it over the years, U.S. News has pushed law schools in all kinds of weird ways. For a while, it was how many books you had in your library. So law schools at a time when things were going electronic were still trying to scoop up as many of actual volumes in their library, which is a waste of time. They still look at faculty to student ratios at a time when law schools really need to cut their permanent faculties down a little bit at a time when legal education is so expensive and they need to offer more scholarships. So that, to me, is one of the big struggles for the deans and for the legal education industry, is just figuring out how U.S. News and World Report is warping all of legal education, and how at some point in the future we can get a handle on that.
I couldn't agree with Michael more. I think that my experience with the ABA so far, in a short period of time, has been positive. So I don't have any complaints there yet, and maybe won't. But with U.S. News and World Report, I think it's fair to say that I've only been now to 2 deans conferences, but it is the thing that I hear the most complaints about, even from the schools who are ranked in the top 10, who obviously benefit by the ranking system, and even they think it's an unfair system. But until I think the ABA and deans across the ranking spectrum, from Harvard and Yale to all the others, agree in one way to actually deal with this, it won't change. And there's probably still enough self-interest in law schools that wouldn't join the fray, even if they're muttering under their breath at a dean's conference.
All right, well, with that, we'll close out our September Hot Talk. Our thanks to Dean Peters, Dean Harris, Dean Sharp, Dean Bishop. The session is approved for 1 hour of continuing legal education. Please sign in the back. And you can also pick up a copy of a American Association of American Law Schools Statement on the Value of a Legal Education. It may give you a little bit of food for thought on some of the things that we were talking about today. And thank you for coming, and I hope to see you at next month's Hot Talk.